layer structure, including copper oxygen layer, and then the other part is the charge reservoir part to put electrons into it. Based on this, one can find how find new material into it. Let's skip the details. And so then finally, the mercury compound was discovered by the Swiss group, and with this 1 layer, 2 layer, 3 layer, and then when you increase the number of layers, the TC indeed goes higher and higher, as you can see here. But then after 3 layers, it goes back down again. You know, the highest TC in this material is 134 degrees Kelvin. But then if you take this material, squeeze it, and then the TC actually goes higher. You know, let me see what. Well, I don't have that here. It goes up to 164 degrees Kelvin. You apply 31 gigapascal. So then after that, our goal was try to look for room temperature superconductor. And during that period of time, in 1989, I was given a talk in New York. And then my host, before the lecture started, he gave me this slide. He said, announcing the first superconductor that works at room temperature. And turns out this was a conductor, real conductor, a musical conductor. And of course, he has to be room temperature, otherwise he'll be dead, you know. So that was quite interesting. And he was Kroger. And then, so that was a real room temperature superconductor. And a little later, got stuck. I have problem. It won't move forward. Oh, then of course, during that period of time, there's a movie called Avatar. And in the movie, they show this picture. It's a room temperature levitator, you know, levitating. And some people thought this was really a room temperature superconducting, levitating at room temperature. That's what happened, but that's in the movie. Yeah, that's in the movie. But the room temperature superconductor did not happen until 2005. In the MRS meeting at Boston, I remember, at that time I was given a talk in one of the sessions, and then one of the people came over and said, we are still talking about high temperature superconductor. People already got into room temperature. I said, who? They told me it was Mikhail Aramets, you know, from Germany, but he's a Russian physicist in Germany, and show this data. As you can see, make it simple. How much more time I have? 8 minutes. Okay, thank you. And you can see here, and when they apply pressure, then the resistance, this is hydrogen-3 sulfur. When I apply pressure, and you can see the resistance goes from high value to low value when we go into superconducting. So he plot the temperature. It turns out it can go up to 150 degrees Kelvin. All that, so that was very impressive. For me to see that this is true, I immediately, after my talk, I went to his talk and asked him. He was very gracious and gave me his talks and really tried to see whether anything we can work together and try to solve this problem, whether it's really superconducting or not. So immediately Within 2 weeks, I flew to his lab and visited his lab and saw his experiment. But it turns out, doing this experiment just by presence in the lab doesn't tell you too much, But at least he can reproduce all these impressive results. Then he also had this applied magnetic field, and you can see the superconducting transition is shifted downward. But the interesting thing is that you can see it's almost parallelly downward shift. And for high TC, usually that should not be the case, because at this high temperature, there was flux flow. It should be broadened, instead of just going down like this, almost in parallel. And then, for example, in the high TC material, as you can see, this transition, actually it's broadened when you apply magnetic field going down. It's not in parallel, shift downward. And then when you look at the other thing, the isotope effect, they also saw isotope effect. And when they changed the hydrogen by deuterium, they can see the TC drops to lower temperature. But this experiment actually is not as simple as shown here. Isotope effect is a very careful measurement, But anyway, they claim this actually is consistent with the superconducting transition. And then if you look into their data, in order for them, the raw data, they show the transition actually at different pressure. Sometimes, for example, 177, they pick a temperature, very high temperature, but they have 43 GPa, and then the transition becomes like this. 185, it becomes even lower. So the measurement is fluctuating. A lot of uncertainty involved here. Then finally, in the science paper, Nature paper, they show the magnetic measurements, as you can see here, and that's in fact typical, very convincing evidence showing that they saw the superconducting transition. But if you compare that with the standard superconducting transition, and it should go like this, and field cool going like this, and zero field cool going like this, field cool should be going like this for standard superconductor. If the superconductor has some magnetic component, you may have some extra things happening here. But let's assume that this material may have some magnetic component, so therefore it goes up. But their whole curve, if you look at the whole curve indicating here, and then you can, based on this whole curve, reconstruct the MH curve, and try to, the HT curve, try to find the critical field for the material. Turns out, for standard superconductor, it should be something like this, indicating here, the HC2, as temperature goes up, should drop down, HC1, the same thing. But for their data, if you plot it out, it goes like this. So it's a very strange behavior in that case, okay? So therefore, at that time, some people, particularly in UCSD group, raised some questions. And Hirsch and co-worker raised some questions about whether people really saw the superconducting phase or not in this material. But then very quickly later, a group in geophysical lab by Doug Hamley, who is now in University of Illinois at Circle campus, they announced that superconductivity happens at 260 degrees Kelvin, and then under high pressure, as shown here. It looks very convincing, except if you look at very carefully, this represents warming curve, and this cooling curve. Actually, the order is not correct, But anyway, for people looking at the transition, they don't put that kind of attention to it. One of the most exciting things was by Diaz from University of Rochester. They published this curve in Nature. As you can see, they claim the important thing, and many others he also published. And in these things, they claim you don't need such a high pressure. You get superconductivity to room temperature and pretty low pressure, something like 10 kilobar. You can get it in this thing. And They also show their sample, very interesting, under pressure change in